The Awakening Protocol. The Concordat research vessel, Endless Seeker, drifted into orbit around the barren planet designated GX-742, its hull gleaming under the light of a distant red sun. Commander Treslick stood at the observation deck, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the desolate world below. His scaled skin shimmered with anticipation. There was something different about this place. Preliminary scans complete, Commander, reported Science Officer Nilari, her tentacles gracefully manipulating the holographic controls. We're detecting unusual energy signatures from the Northern Hemisphere. They don't match any known patterns in our database. Treslick's secondary heart quickened. After 15 cycles of exploration, finding something truly unique was rare. Prepare a landing team. I want to see this myself. Hours later, the landing craft touched down on the dusty surface of GX-742. The world was a wasteland of rust-colored plains and jagged mountains, seemingly lifeless for millions of years. Commander Treslick led his team across the cracked surface, each step raising puffs of ancient dust. The energy signature is strongest in that direction. Nilari pointed toward a distant ridge, approximately 2 kills from our position. As they crested the ridge, the team fell silent. Before them lay the remains of a structure, geometric and purposeful, half buried in the planet's crust. Unlike the chaotic patterns of natural formation, these ruins spoke of intelligence, of design. How old? Treslick asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nilari consulted her scanner. Initial dating suggests. I must have made an error. She recalibrated and tried again. Commander, if these readings are correct, this structure is over 12 million years old. The team exchanged glances of disbelief. The oldest known civilization in the Concordat's records was the Valkyrie, who had achieved spaceflight barely 4 million years ago. That's impossible, muttered Security Chief Dorn, his armored exoskeleton clicking as he shifted uneasily. No species maintains technological continuity for that long. Yet the structure before them defied their understanding of galactic history. As they cautiously approached, they discovered an entrance, a perfect arch leading into darkness. Inside, their lights revealed corridors of a material so smooth and unblemished, it seemed freshly made rather than prehistoric. The walls bore intricate patterns that shifted subtly as they passed, as if responding to their presence. These markings resemble mathematical sequences, Nilari observed, but they're using a base 10 numerical system. Most evolved species naturally develop based on their physical appendages. The Valkyrie use base 8, we Exarchonians use base 4. Base 10, Treslick mused, like humans. The team progressed deeper into the complex, scanners mapping their path through chambers of increasing complexity. In the heart of the structure, they discovered a spherical room with a pedestal at its center. Atop the pedestal rested an object unlike anything they had seen before, a metallic cube approximately 20 centimeters on each side, covered in the same shifting patterns as the walls. Careful, warned Dorn as Nilari approached the artifact. We should follow containment protocols. But the artifact seemed to have its own ideas. As Nilari's scanner passed over it, the cube illuminated from within, the patterns on its surface flowing like liquid. A soft humming filled the chamber, building steadily in pitch and volume. We should leave, Dorn insisted, weapon raised defensively. Before they could retreat, the cube projected a field of shimmering light that engulfed the team. Treslick felt a strange sensation, as if something was gently probing his mind, searching for something it couldn't find. The light vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. The cube now glowed steadily, a deep blue pulse emanating from its core. Everyone all right? Treslick asked, checking his team. None appeared harmed, though their instruments had temporarily malfunctioned. When systems returned online, Nilari gasped at her readings. Commander, the artifact is generating the signal. It's propagating through subspace at a rate I've never seen. The signal will reach across the entire galaxy within hours. What kind of signal? Treslick demanded. I can't decipher it completely, but it contains mathematical sequences, spatial coordinates, and what appears to be DNA patterns. Treslick felt a chill run through his body. We need to contain this now. Despite their best efforts, the artifact resisted all attempts at containment. The signal continued unabated, strengthening with each passing moment. Left with no alternative, they transported the cube to the Endless Seeker for further study, hoping the ship's advanced laboratories might provide answers. They couldn't have known what they had set in motion. Across the galaxy, on the Concordat capital world of Altheris Prime, High Chancellor Vex Moria received the emergency transmission from the Endless Seeker with growing alarm. 12 million years, she repeated, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. And you brought this artifact aboard your vessel without authorization. We followed all protocols, Chancellor. Commander Treslick responded, his image flickering across the vast distance. But this discovery changes everything we know about galactic history. The artifact's technology exceeds our understanding by orders of magnitude. The Chancellor was about to reprimand him further when an aide rushed into her chamber, bypassing all security protocols. An unprecedented breach of etiquette. Forgive the intrusion, Chancellor, the aide panted, but we're receiving reports from across Concordat space. Ancient structures, previously thought to be natural formations or the ruins of long-extinct species, are activating. All of them, simultaneously. Vex Moria froze, her crystalline structure momentarily losing its luminescence. Show me. The central display filled with incoming reports. A dormant planetoid in the Cygnus sector suddenly generating a gravimetric field. A supposedly dead space station in the Vega Protectorate powering up after millions of years. Mysterious obelisks on 100 worlds suddenly emitting the same signal detected by the Endless Seeker. It's a network, she whispered. A galaxy-wide network that's been dormant all this time. As the implications crashed over her, another transmission arrived. This one from the Tactical Division. Chancellor, we've identified the source of the DNA pattern in the signal. It's human. Vex Moria felt something akin to fear ripple through her crystalline matrix. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, primitive bipeds who had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. The Concordat had observed them from afar, classifying them as a developing species of little consequence. But if this signal was to be believed, if these awakening structures were somehow connected to human DNA, then everything they thought they knew about galactic history was wrong. Get me the Concordat Security Council, she ordered, and establish a direct line to the Advanced Research Division. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Within hours, the most brilliant minds in the Concordat were studying the signal and its effects. What they discovered shook the foundations of their civilization. The structures aren't just activating, explained Chief Researcher Zolteth, her holographic projection hovering before the Security Council. They're reconfiguring themselves based on the signal's instructions, and they all share one common feature. They were built to interact with human physiology. Impossible, growled Counselor Drax, his massive jaws snapping in agitation. Humans have been spacefaring for less than a millennium. These structures are millions of years old. Nevertheless, continued Zolteth, the evidence is conclusive. The mathematical patterns, the DNA sequences, they all point to human origin. Furthermore, we've discovered references to Earth in the most ancient archaeological sites across the galaxy, dating back to a period we previously considered pre-civilization. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. You're suggesting, said Chancellor Vex Moria slowly, that humans are not a young species discovering the stars for the first time, but rather the inheritors of the oldest civilization the galaxy has ever known. Zolteth finished. A civilization so advanced they seeded technologies across the stars that would only respond to their genetic signature. Technologies that have remained dormant until now. The Security Council erupted into chaos, multiple species voicing their disbelief and alarm simultaneously. Chancellor Vex Moria raised her crystalline arms, restoring order. If what you say is true, she addressed Zolteth, then why haven't the humans activated these systems before now? Why do they appear so primitive? We believe they forgot, replied Zolteth. Something happened, perhaps a catastrophic war or natural disaster, that caused humanity to regress technologically. They'd been rebuilding their civilization without knowledge of their true heritage. And now, asked a counselor from the shadows, now the network is awakening them. The signal contains not just activation codes but information, vast amounts of it. If this reaches Earth, the implication hung in the air like a guillotine blade. We cannot allow a species to suddenly gain access to technology beyond our understanding, declared Counselor Drax. The power imbalance would be unacceptable. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Chancellor Vex Moria considered their options with the cold calculation her species was known for. We have always prided ourselves on being a peaceful confederation, but this situation presents an existential threat to the established order. She turned to the military liaison. How quickly can we assemble a containment fleet near the human solar system? We must intercept this signal before it reaches them. 12 hours, Chancellor. Make it 6. We cannot risk delay. As the council dispersed to execute their plans, Chancellor Vex Moria remained in her chamber, contemplating the irony of their situation. The Concordat had spent millennia believing themselves to be the pinnacle of galactic civilization, only to discover they might be little more than newcomers in a history written by humans. Aboard the Endless Seeker, Commander Tresslix watched with fascination as the artifact continued to pulse with blue light, its signal strengthening despite all attempts to dampen it. I've managed to decode more of the transmission, Nilari reported. It's not just sending information out, it's receiving responses from the other structures. They're communicating. Tresslix studied the flowing patterns on the cube's surface. Can you determine what they're saying? It's becoming clearer. They appear to be running diagnostics, confirming functional capabilities across the network. And there's something else. Coordinates being exchanged. They're mapping themselves. For what purpose? Nilari's tentacles trembled slightly. I believe they're creating navigation points, a pathway leading back to. She was interrupted by a blaring alarm. Security Chief Dorn rushed onto the bridge, his exoskeleton fully battle-ready. Commander, the artifact has breached containment. It's interfacing with our ship's systems. Before Tresslix could respond, the lights throughout the vessel flickered and changed to a deep blue hue. The ship's artificial intelligence spoke, but not in its usual voice. This voice was different, warmer, with an accent none of them recognized. Protocol Lazarus initiated. Reconnection sequence 97% complete. Homecoming pathway established. The main view screen activated without command, displaying a stellar map with a glowing path cutting across the galaxy. At the end of the path was a small blue planet. Earth, whispered Tresslix. The artifact's blue glow intensified, and for a brief moment, Commander Tresslix thought he saw something in its depths, a vision of towering spires and golden ships sailing between stars, of a civilization so vast it spanned the galaxy. And at the center of it all stood beings that looked remarkably like humans, but with eyes that held the wisdom of eons. Then the vision was gone, and Tresslix understood with sudden clarity what they had done. They hadn't discovered an artifact. They had triggered an awakening. The oldest civilization in the galaxy wasn't extinct. It had merely been sleeping. And now it was time for humanity to remember what they once were. As the Endless Seeker accelerated without command, setting course for Earth, Tresslix realized they were no longer in control. They had become messengers for powers beyond their comprehension, heralds of the new age, or perhaps the return of the oldest age the galaxy had ever known. The race to Earth had begun, but whether the Concordat fleet or the awakening signal would reach humanity first remained to be seen. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. The Inheritors return. Dr. Elena Reyes stood in the control room of Earth's deep space monitoring station, staring at the readings with a mixture of confusion and excitement. For 3 days, the system had been detecting anomalous signals from across the galaxy, signals that didn't match any known pattern yet somehow felt strangely familiar. "It's happening again," she called to her colleague, Dr. Wei Chen, as another wave of signals washed over their receivers. "Stronger this time. Whatever it is, it's getting closer." Wei examined the frequency patterns spreading across his display. "These aren't random. There's structure here, mathematical precision. Almost like." "Like what?" "Like they're meant for us specifically." Helena was about to respond when every screen in the monitoring station suddenly flickered to life with the same image. A spinning double helix of DNA that gradually morphed into complex schematics and mathematical equations. "My God," whispered Wei. "It's interfacing directly with our systems." More surprising than the intrusion was how easily their computers accepted the incoming data. Rather than triggering security protocols, the systems seemed to welcome the signal, making space for it, organizing it. Elena felt a strange tingling sensation at the base of her skull as she watched the information flow. It wasn't uncomfortable, more like recognition, a sense of something long forgotten being remembered. "Wei," she said slowly, "I can read this." "What do you mean?" "It's not in any language I recognize. I don't know how to explain it. I just understand it." As Elena reached toward the screen, the tingling intensified. The moment her fingers touched the display, the information rearranged itself, responding to her touch in ways their technology shouldn't allow. Images formed in her mind. Vast cities among the stars, ships of impossible design, and beings who looked human yet carried themselves with the confidence of gods. She pulled her hand back, gasping, "We need to call the director. Now." 12 hours later, similar scenes were playing out across Earth. Every digital system, from quantum supercomputers to children's tablets, displayed fragments of the same signal. People everywhere reported strange dreams and sudden insights. Engineers woke with solutions to problems that had stumped them for years. Archaeologists suddenly understood ancient texts no one had previously deciphered. In the White House Situation Room, President Hernandez listened grimly as his advisors reported the global phenomenon. "We've confirmed similar effects worldwide, Mr. President," said Defense Secretary Okafor. "The signal appears to be activating something within us, some latent capability we didn't know existed." "What about our space assets?" the President asked. "That's where things get even stranger," replied NASA Administrator Lin. "The International Lunar Base is reporting that the artifact we discovered in the Tycho crater last year has activated. It's generating a field that's, well, sir, it's rewriting the lunar surface." The screens displayed live footage from the moon, where there had once been nothing but gray regolith. Intricate structures were emerging as if being remembered by the very dust. Buildings, towers, and launch platforms assembling themselves from materials that shouldn't possess such capabilities. "It's happening on Mars, too," Administrator Lin continued. "And deep space telemetry shows similar activations across the solar system." The President's National Security Advisor leaned forward. "Sir, we're also detecting multiple objects approaching Earth at FTL speeds. First contact protocols have been initiated." President Hernandez rubbed his temples. "So we're simultaneously experiencing a global technological awakening and potential first contact." "Wonderful." Dr. Elena Reyes, hastily summoned from the monitoring station, cleared her throat. "Mr. President, I don't think this is first contact. The signals, they're not introducing themselves. They're welcoming us back." In high orbit above Earth, the Concordat fleet emerged from hyperspace. 50 warships representing the combined might of the galaxy's dominant powers. Fleet Admiral Vax Deller surveyed the small blue planet on his view screen with cold calculation. "Status report," he demanded. "The human planet appears to be at mid-level technological development," reported his tactical officer. "Primitive orbital infrastructure, no significant defensive capabilities. They've detected our arrival, but have yet to respond." And the signal's progress. It has already reached the planet. Admiral, we're detecting widespread activation of dormant systems throughout their solar system. Vaxtalar hissed in frustration. They were too late to prevent the signal from reaching its destination. Now they would have to contain the situation by force. Prepare the null field generators, he ordered. Target their primary population centers. Once their awakening is suppressed, we'll establish communication and— Admiral, interrupted the sensor officer, multiple contacts appearing throughout the system. The tactical display filled with new signatures, hundreds of them, materializing around planets, moons, and asteroids. Ancient stations and shipyards, dormant for millions of years, were coming online, their power signatures dwarfing anything in the Concordat fleet. Impossible, breathed Vaxtalar. The scale of this, they had infrastructure throughout their entire system. As the Admiral watched in mounting horror, a massive structure began to emerge from beneath the surface of Earth's moon. A colossal shipyard that had lain hidden for eons, now awakening to its original purpose. "Sir, we're being hailed," reported the communications officer. "From Earth." In the White House Situation Room, Dr. Elena Reyes stood with her hand pressed against a display panel that had inexplicably grown from the conference table. Information flowed through her consciousness at impossible speeds, yet she processed it effortlessly, as if she had been designed for this very purpose. "I can communicate with them," she told the president. "I understand their language now." President Hernandez nodded, still struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. "Tell them we come in peace but will defend ourselves if necessary." Elena smiled sadly. "With respect, Mr. President, I don't think that's the appropriate message anymore." Before he could question her, Elena closed her eyes, and the signal from her mind reached out through the awakening network. On the main screen, the face of an alien appeared, reptilian features arranged in an expression of barely controlled fear. "This is Fleet Admiral Vaxtalar of the Galactic Concordat," the alien announced. "We come with peaceful intentions to discuss the situation that has arisen regarding your species." Elena responded without consulting anyone, the words flowing through her with absolute certainty. "This is Dr. Elena Reyes of Earth. You come with a fleet of warships and speak of peace, yet your weapons are powered and targeting our cities. Perhaps you should reconsider your approach, Admiral." The alien's eyes widened in surprise. You shouldn't be able to detect our targeting systems." "There is much you believe we shouldn't be able to do," Elena replied. "That list is about to get much shorter." As if responding to her words, the ancient shipyard on the moon activated fully, its massive construction arms extending toward space. Throughout the solar system, defense platforms that had lain dormant since before the first fish crawled onto land powered their weapons, locking onto the Concordat vessels. "We did not come to fight," Vaxtalar insisted, his posture becoming more submissive. "We merely sought to prevent a potentially destabilizing situation by attacking us before we could remember who we are." Elena's voice carried an authority she had never possessed before. Knowledge continued to flood her mind, the history of humanity, their achievements, their fall, and the safeguards they had left behind should they ever rise again. "You misunderstand," Vaxtalar protested. "We are a peaceful confederation, who assembled a war fleet the moment you discovered our heritage." Elena interrupted. "Your actions speak louder than your words, Admiral." The president finally found his voice. "Dr. Rice, what exactly is happening here?" Helena turned to him, her eyes now glowing with a subtle blue light, the same light that emanated from awakening structures across the system. "We're remembering, Mr. President. Humanity isn't a young species discovering the stars for the first time. We're the oldest civilization in the galaxy, returning after a long absence." She gestured, and holographic displays filled the room, showing images of a human civilization that had once spanned thousands of worlds. 12 million years ago, our ancestors faced a catastrophe, a gamma-ray burst that sterilized much of the galaxy. They knew they couldn't save everyone, so they enacted the Lazarus Protocol. The displays showed massive ships departing dying worlds, heading toward Earth, a planet shielded from the disaster by its position in the galaxy. They regressed technologically, burying their knowledge and seeding the galaxy with dormant technology that would only reactivate when humanity was ready. They became us, starting over, rebuilding from nothing, forgetting their past so they could survive into the future. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't been struggling to join a galactic community. They had created it, shaped it, and then stepped away from it, leaving behind a legacy that had shaped the evolution of every species now watching Earth with growing apprehension. "And now?" asked the president. "Now we remember," Elena said simply. The signal was the final key in the Lazarus Protocol. It's unlocking capabilities within our DNA, connections to technology we built eons ago. She turned back to the screen where Admiral Vax Delar waited nervously. "You have a choice, Admiral. Return to your capitals and inform the Concordat that humanity remembers its heritage. We do not desire conflict, but neither will we allow threats against our world." To emphasize her point, several of the ancient defense platforms fired precision shots that passed harmlessly between the Concordat ships, a demonstration of both power and restraint. "Understood," Vax Delar replied, his scales pale with fear. "We will withdraw and convey your message." As the alien fleet retreated from Earth's orbit, President Hernandez turned to Elena. "What happens now?" Elena looked around the room at the faces of her fellow humans, confused, frightened, but also filled with a growing sense of wonder. Throughout the planet, people were experiencing the same awakening, connecting to abilities and knowledge their ancestors had hidden within them. "Now," she said, "we rejoin the galaxy, not as newcomers, but as returners. We have much to learn about what we once were and what we can become." She smiled, and for a moment, President Hernandez saw something ancient in her eyes, a wisdom born of stars and time. "And we have much to teach our younger siblings among the stars." Across Earth, humanity's awakening continued. The changes were not physical but mental, neural pathways long dormant suddenly active, connecting people to each other and to the technology their ancestors had created. They remembered not as individuals but as a species, each person gaining different fragments of their collective heritage. Engineers suddenly understood propulsion systems that defied current physics. Medical researchers grasped cures for diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Architects envisioned cities that could float among the clouds or deep beneath the oceans. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. It would take years, perhaps generations, for humanity to fully integrate their remembered knowledge with their present identity. But the path forward was clear, a synthesis of who they had been and who they had become. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of Remembrance Station, the first of the ancient orbital platforms to be fully recommissioned. Below her, Earth glowed blue and green, already showing signs of transformation as humanity began to implement technologies they once believed were centuries beyond their reach. Beside her stood Commander Treslix, the Zirconian who had unknowingly triggered humanity's awakening. As the only alien granted permission to remain in Earth's solar system, he had become an unofficial ambassador between humanity and the galaxy they were rejoining. "The Concordat Council has accepted your terms," he informed her. "They acknowledge humanity's prior claim to the systems containing your ancient infrastructure." Elena nodded. "And the other matter?" "They have agreed to a knowledge exchange. It will be humbling for many species to learn from those they once considered primitives." "We were primitive," Elena reminded him. "And in many ways, we still are. We may have created the first interstellar civilization, but we also forgot it. That suggests a certain lack of foresight." She smiled, gazing out at the stars that had once been humanity's domain and would be again. "Besides, the galaxy has evolved while we slept. Your species, all the members of the Concordat, you've developed cultures and technologies along your own paths. There's much we can learn from each other." Treslix considered this, Among his people, such humility from a superior power was unexpected. If you don't mind my asking, what happened? Why did your ancestors choose to forget everything they had built? Valina's expression grew somber. We're still piecing that together. It seems the catastrophe was more than just a natural disaster. Our ancestors had grown, divided. Factions fought over whether to use their technology to escape the galaxy or to try to save it. In the end, those who chose to stay designed the Lazarus Protocol, not just to preserve our species, but to give us a chance to evolve differently when we awakened. She touched the view screen, bringing up images of the ancient human civilization, magnificent yet cold, powerful yet isolated in their supremacy. They wanted us to remember our power only after we had remembered our humanity, to experience struggle, cooperation, and growth as a young species would, so that when we reclaimed our heritage, we would use it with wisdom rather than arrogance. Trestlix mulled over her words. A second chance. Exactly, Alina agreed. Not just for us, but for the galaxy. Our ancestors dominated. We hoped to collaborate. They conquered. We wish to connect. Outside the view screen, a new ship emerged from the lunar shipyard, smaller than the massive vessels of old but incorporating both ancient human designs and modern innovations. Its name was emblazoned along the hull. Unity. The first of a new fleet, Alina explained. Not built for war, but for exploration. To re-establish contact with the worlds our ancestors seeded, and to meet new civilizations as equals rather than returning conquerors. Trestlix watched the ship with a mixture of awe and relief. When the Concordat had discovered humanity's true heritage, they had feared the return of ancient overlords. Instead, they were witnessing the birth of something new, a humanity that carried the knowledge of gods, but had learned compassion through their time as mortals. "What will you do now?" he asked. Alina gazed at the stars, her eyes reflecting the blue glow of awakened human technology throughout the solar system. "We'll remember, we'll learn, and then we'll go home, to the 1,000 worlds our ancestors once walked, not to reclaim them, but to meet them anew." She extended her hand to Trestlix in the human gesture of friendship. "And we hope you'll walk with us, not as subjects, but as partners in whatever comes next." As Trestlix accepted her hand, the Unity engaged its drives, disappearing in a flash of light that seemed to reach across time itself, a bridge between humanity's forgotten past and its remembered future. Throughout the galaxy, ancient systems continued to awaken, not with the thundering return of conquering masters, but with the gentle recognition of inheritors who had grown wiser during their long sleep. The oldest power in the galaxy had returned, not to rule, but to remember, and in remembering, to forge a new path among the stars they had once called home.